Hi everyone, it's Liam here from Rating the Races. So we've got the new handicap marks come out, and let's have a look at 5 that caught my eye over hurdles. They're new marks, and we'll actually start off with a horse that I think they got it wrong. First Street finished 3rd in a mare's hurdle at Cheltenham. Was it a mare's hurdle or was it the Unibet hurdle? Might have even been the Unibet hurdle. Let me just check. Finished 3rd, went up £5 to a mark of 146 after running in the Unibet hurdle. Now, she was never going to win that. He was never going to win that, sorry. He was never going to beat Lossiemouth or Constitution Hill or Love Envoy or any of those that ever were going to turn up. Now, you've won £13,375 for that. But you've gone up £5 to 146. Well, if they'd actually tried to win the Betfair Hurdle, they would have actually run off the same handicap mark, or 141, as they did 2 years ago when they finished 3rd. And last year they finished 8th off like 152, I think it was. So clearly would have been off about the right handicap mark for the Betfair Hurdle. But for some reason they decided to run in this race. They've gone up £5, and that's going to make things harder in handicaps. And he's not going to win a graded race anytime soon, is he? He's not going to beat Lossiemouth or Constitution Hill, Love Envoy, State Man, Imperial Pass, all these types of horses that might run in the 2 mile grade 2, grade 3, grade 1 races. Even Marie's Rock, if they ended up going 2.5 mile. They picked up £13,375 and ruined the handicap mark of the horse. If they'd gone for the Betfair Hurdle and got beat, and finished down the field, finished 8th, at least they would have had another go of probably a lower handicap mark. And you could have kept going, and eventually, even if it wasn't 141 was the best mark that they needed, or 138 might have been. But what that would have shown is that even off 141, he couldn't win a handicap if he'd got beat in the Betfair Hurdle. And with that in mind, the fact he's now 146, he's definitely not going to win a handicap. So this is where I think sometimes trainers or owners just run horses for the fun of it, or they just go, oh, there's a 2 mile race, we might as well run that one. And they don't actually look at what the horse has previously achieved or what it could achieve using its new or current handicap mark. So yeah, that was disappointing for me. I was really looking forward to First Street in that Betfair Hurdle, but yeah, I think they've ruined that going forward, personally. Moving on to Nurse Susan, went up £6 to 135. I actually got them in the wrong order in terms of who went up higher. Nurse Susan went up £6 to 135. And do you know what? I think she won over 3 mile despite the trip. The horse wants 2.5. Doesn't want the 3 mile trip. Can win over 2.5. Now, Dan Skelton last year, everyone was suggesting that Langadam was going to be running in the Martin Pipe because he bumped into one in Galopin des Champs. He didn't. He ended up in the Coral Cup and won. I wonder whether they might do another switcheroo with Langadam this year. Everyone thinks he's coming back for that Coral Cup. Maybe they'll go for the Martin Pipe this year and send Nurse Susan for the Coral Cup. I actually think Nurse Susan would win the Coral Cup, and I think Langadam would win a Martin Pipe. So just something to think about. Yeah, I really like Nurse Susan. I think even off her new mark of 135, she can win a feature handicap like that. If she ends up in the Coral Cup or the Martin Pipe, I think she will go very, very close in those. She doesn't need the 3 mile. I don't think, she's not qualified for a Pertemps final. They're not going to get a run in between then, I don't think, and get her qualified with a Pertemps final in mind. They've got to go straight to Cheltenham now, in my opinion. Her form at Cheltenham's fine. She's obviously won over 2.5, and she was 4th in a good mare's hurdle when those around her were much higher rated. And if she'd raced them in a handicap, she would have beaten them. I really like Nurse Susan. I've highlighted her after that run. She unfortunately got injured for the rest of the season. She's come back and she's got 2 wins on the board already. Talking of the Martin Pipe, well, we just mentioned the Martin Pipe. Could we see lump sum in the Martin Pipe now? Lump sum's been given a mark of 130, gone up £2 to 130. Now, that's interesting because it all depends on how highly you rate Jericho de Repenay. If you think Jericho de Repenay is going to win the Supreme Novice, I don't. But I think he'll run well in it. Don't get me wrong, he's not going to be like last in a Supreme. He's still going to go in the Supreme as well. but I don't think he'll win it. But I could see him finishing 4th or 5th sort of thing. With that in mind, I say that phrase a lot, don't I? I'm really sorry for using that phrase so much. I'll have to find out other phrases that I can use. Thinking about that, Lump Sum, therefore, has run a really good race to finish second to Jericho de Repe, not beaten far. Now, Lump Sum looked outpaced that day as well at the weekend at Doncaster, so surely has to go up in trip now. Now that he's come up against something that's quite decent, he's found that he lacks that bit of pace to keep up. Go up in trip to the Martin Pipe, I think he'd go well, wouldn't he? Last year, 126 got in the Martin Pipe, so 130 should get you in the Martin Pipe. And he's that type of horse that looks very unexposed, has clearly got ability, and just potentially bumped into a graded horse. Maybe not a Supreme Novice winner, but certainly a Supreme Novice horse in Jericho de Repe. So yeah, I'd like to see a Lump Sum run in the Martin Pipe. The next horse we've got to talk about is Under Control, who went up £1 to 138, and to be honest, I think that was very kind. Should have gone up more than that. Got beat by Ashro Diamond and beat Gala Marceau. I think that's strong form, and Under Control has clearly bounced back from her disappointing effort at Newbury when things obviously went wrong because she stopped very quickly. She's come back with a good second. Up to 138, surely you go to the Imperial Cup. Has had a run at Sandown, won it, beat the subsequent Greatwood Hurdle winner, Iberico Lord, beat that horse over Sandown, at Sandown, over course and distance. Surely you've got to go for the Imperial Cup and then potentially turn up in the County Hurdle or under a penalty trying to win a bonus. I mean, that looks ideal for the JP horse. You've got to go for that Imperial Cup County Hurdle route for Under Control. And the final one is another JP horse. It's No Ordinary Joe, who ran moderately at Doncaster. I just wonder whether he might be a bit of a Camprond. So Camprond always seemed to run his best races at Cheltenham. Didn't seem to run very well elsewhere. I think he ran well at Aintree once. But always seemed to come back to the Cheltenham Festival, look well handicapped and run a big race. Fortunately, we no longer have Camprond, but they do have No Ordinary Joe, who's been to Cheltenham twice. He's finished third in it must be a Greatwood in November. Let's just load these races up. And second in the Martin Pipe last year. So when he was third in November, just waiting for this to load, it was... Sorry about this. It was indeed in a Greatwood Hurdle behind West Cork and Adagio. And in front of Camprond. Talk of Camprond. Marie's Rock was further back as well. You know, a good Greatwood Hurdle. Last year, finished second in a Martin Pipe behind Iroko, who, you know, had clearly shown plenty. Got some really good R figure here, 160.3. Beating Buddy 1, who's come out and done well since. He's much higher rated. I think he's won 3 races since then. And also finished second at Aintree. So that form looks very strong. That came off a mark of 139 for No Ordinary Joe. Would run here off 140 if they go straight for it. That looks ideal. I mean, Iroko and Buddy 1 are much higher rated, or would have been if they were both running in this handicap hurdle at the Martin Pipe again. So No Ordinary Joe would look thrown in. He does look really well handicapped, to be honest, and I think this is where they'll be aiming to come back for the Martin Pipe. So I've actually highlighted 3 potentially there for the Martin Pipe in terms of Lump Sum, No Ordinary Joe, and via Nurse Susan Langadan, who I think should do a switcheroo and annoy all the anti-post punters, because that's quite funny. If they all turned up, who do I think would win? Nurse Susan or Langadan, whichever one of those turned up in the Martin Pipe, because I'm not sure how strong that Jericho de Repe form is. I do think Lump Sum would run well. I would imagine he'd be top 5, and I do think No Ordinary Joe would also be top 5, but I think Nurse Susan and Langadan are both handicapped superbly still. So there's some hurdlers that caught my eye with their new handicap marks.